Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
All right. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Sam Bushman live on your radio. Hard-hitting news the networks refuse to use, no doubt, starts now. This, my fellow Americans, is the broadcast for May 28th in the year of our Lord 2025, promoting God, family, country, protecting life, liberty, and property. That's who we are. That's what we do. We reject revolution unless it's a Jesus revolution. Then we're in because we follow the Prince of Peace. We actually use the incredible checks and balances brilliantly put in place by the Founding Fathers as we use the supreme law of the land, the Constitution for the United States of America, as our guide. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you're all doing absolutely fantastic. Yesterday, we covered a bunch of great stuff. Primarily, we talked to Sheriff Richard Mack first about the fact that, thank heavens to great people, Trump pardoned former Sheriff Scott Jenkins. Incredible stuff. Roger Stone, many others. General Flynn get the credit for it. Richard Mack getting credit for it as well. I, behind the scenes, helped a teeny bit. We put a press release together. We really worked on this, and man, Trump delivered. It's huge news. We've got news of some other pardons that are great that'll be coming up today as well. We'll talk about that. Then second hour, I had on Mr. Steve Stockman, well-known former congressman. Great job there, too. Talked about a lot of things. We're still seeking for his pardon. He got a commuting of his sentence, which is a blessing and a half. But we got to push all the way for pardon because they're still harassing Steve Stockman. Now, thank heavens, Trump fired one of the people that have been harassing Steve Stockman still to this day. So there's some good news on the horizon from Trump. And, you know, it just goes crazy from there. Meanwhile, though, Lance Migliaccio joins us, the big Mig brother. George takes a pass today. He's got some personal business to take care of. We'll check with him next time. But Lance Migliaccio with me, and hey, they're the tip of the spear when it comes to all things truth-telling. They bring the receipts and let you know what's going on, and they basically say, hey, you know what? You have the right to tell people things they don't want to hear. Amen to that. Welcome, Lance.
Hey, thanks, Sam. Happy to be here as always. You know, I love the Liberty Roundtable listeners. They're so educated, and I appreciate you having me on the show as usual. We got a lot of exciting stuff to cover today.
Boy, howdy. Let's talk first for a second, though, about these pardons, because I really think that's critical. This pardon that Trump got for former Sheriff Scott Jenkins, it is huge because really Scott Jenkins has been a Second Amendment guy for a long, long time. And I know they say that this case was all about, hey, Scott Jenkins took money and bribes and this and that, and it's all a big old pack of lies. But it's interesting to me, every one of these people that gets attacked, the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms, and the sheriff's standing up for that, seems to be at the start of it, or the center of it. Sheriff Mack went to the Supreme Court, beat Bill Clinton over the Second Amendment, the Brady Bill in that case. Now Scott Jenkins has to get a pardon from Trump again because of the Second Amendment. They're afraid of that Second Amendment, sir.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I think, you know, it's nice to see pardons getting used in the right way, not like the previous administration. And I also think it's nice to see things happen where we see the regular public talking about people like your sheriff and the need for him to get pardoned. And normally that seems to go on deaf ears. That does not seem to be the situation this time, Sam.
You're right. We're delighted about that. You know, it's really hard to get things to Trump, though. I mean, number one, he's only one guy. Number two, there's a lot of other people. Some of the people around him, I believe, are not the best people, and that's where our frustration comes from. But I think when Trump really gets the straight scoop, and because of Roger Stone and Flynn and a few others, I won't name names because some don't want to be named, but they certainly deserve credit. Let me give them a shout out, name or not. We know who you are, and we're grateful for your leadership and your involvement and your support. But I bring this up because there's a lot of people around Trump that really aren't helpful, and I think that's where a lot of things bog down. We need to be very careful not to blame Trump for that. He's only one guy, and I mean, he's done an incredible job thus far, but there's only so much one person can do, especially when you have, I don't know what you call it, betrayer in your midst, or whatever you want to, whatever term you want to use. Those who don't see things the same, so they shut things down before they ever even see the light of day. That we're still having a problem with. But man, the amount we've accomplished is tremendous.
You know, you are absolutely right. Getting through the layers to actually get something in front of Trump it's really nearly impossible. On top of that, I'll tell you that what I think is really another issue is that there really aren't any access to even people in the cabinet or the administration. So let's say that you had something you'd been sitting on for a long time that you thought was very important information. You really don't have a way to get that to. If you wanted to send, let's say, some sort of a crime to Pam Bondi that you were aware of, there's no email listed for Pam Bondi. There's really no way to get to her, and I think that's a mistake. I think there's lots of information and lots of investigations that have been done by people like you or myself that might be sitting on important items because they didn't really have where to go with that during the Biden administration. And maybe they know about whether it's election fraud or maybe some DOJ crimes of specific individuals. I think that's a flaw. And I also think the way that Trump is insulated, there are certain people, and I think one of them is Susie Wiles. I think she is one of the ones that seems to make it very difficult to get any information to Donald Trump. And I think that's a mistake because I believe a lot of us have done some great work during this time period, when the Biden, installed presidency was going on. And I think there may be some stories and some issues that need to be addressed with the right people, but there's really no access.
That's part of the problem, and then the other part of the problem is, in my opinion, we get kind of clown show discussions, and these are things said by Trump, because for the most part, Trump is off script, and he does his very best, and he does a good job. But in my opinion, oftentimes he says and does things that really turn into a clown show, and the mainstream press that are liberal, that are extreme, that are communist, that are whatever you want to call it, socialist, they hate Trump, they hate everything that we stand for. These people have learned to take advantage of it. They may be crazy on their viewpoints on the proper role of government and on how society should be carried out and all that kind of stuff, but they're very savvy in the media. I'll give you an example. Trump made a comment about a trophy wife. Did you see this?
No, I didn't actually see that.
All right. Trump made a comment about this guy, has got a trophy wife, and hey, trophy wives don't work out very well, and da-da-da-da. Well, now these people went ballistic over at the, different rags. I don't even want to mention their names because I don't want to give them any credit or any support, but these crazy rags are now like, hey, Trump made a misogynistic statement, and Trump did this, Trump did that, Trump said that. And again, why are we talking about trophy wives in the first place? It's a waste of time. You can't tell a trophy wife just because a woman is good looking. That doesn't mean she's a trophy wife. She may be very intelligent, very capable in her own right, without drilling into people's personal relationships or what they've done in the history of their lives or some of these things. It's impossible to say who's a trophy wife and not. Now, I get the point that, hey, a trophy wife's not the way to go. If that's the goal, just a good-looking woman on your arm or whatever. You want somebody that's intelligent, somebody that's loving and caring and kind and family-oriented. And I mean, there's a lot to that. But I bring it up because they've managed to take Trump down sideshows. It's a waste of time. I don't give a rip about anybody's trophy wife. I don't care if somebody's good looking or not. I'm just telling them, hey, to me, you can't measure the content of someone's character just by first looks. You've got to get to know somebody, or you've got to get to know somebody's credentials or history or whatever. And it just seems to be a sideshow, and they've managed to learn to take advantage of that. When they do that, then it's off now. Trump hates women. Trump's this. Trump's that. It's a complete bogus sideshow. And we need to learn not to give that to them, Lance. That's the reason that I'm bringing it up.
Yeah. Well, it isn't the first time that I think Trump's made a comment that maybe was unnecessary. And, of course, that's what the mainstream media does best. They focus on grabbing sound bites or things that will allow them to misdirect the public, because they all get behind these topics. They pick a specific one, and the next thing you know, here it comes. It's all over mainstream media. Then here come all the bot accounts and all the paid shill accounts on social media. And I agree with you. I think giving them those opportunities, I think maybe there are times, Donald Trump's got that New York edge on him. He's got some of that New York sense of humor. And he sometimes makes comments that I think it would be better if he didn't. But I understand why he does it. I'm sure that after being attacked as long as he has been, it doesn't surprise me that he would want to take some shots. Because as a New Yorker, as a fellow New Yorker, I have to tell you that I feel like that sometimes. I want to take some shots, and I have to restrict myself, because there are times when I want to go into the kid from the Bronx mode. So, I kind of get it, but I think as President of the United States, you have to choose your words carefully.
And I get it, too. I have that kind of streak as well, and I've learned over the years to be very careful. not because I don't think those things, but because you want to control what you want to say. It's one thing for a commentator like me and you to say those kind of things, but for the president of the United States to say those kind of things, what happens is it just becomes this tremendous derail. You know, these guys are going off on this trophy wife thing, and I'm thinking, who cares whether he thinks there's trophy wives or that they don't go anywhere or this or that, and it's a bad statement to make towards women, and I don't really even care because I know that Donald Trump is deeper than that. You know, Donald Trump can be taken advantage of for a comment or two, but everything I hear from behind the scenes when people interact with Trump directly, they say he's a nice guy, he's an intelligent guy, he's a humble guy, he's a religious guy, he really is kind to people, and I've seen evidence from people that I know that that's factual. When we come back, we'll talk about that a little bit more. We got a whole lot straight ahead. You're listening to Liberty Roundtable Live, Lance Migliaccio, the Big Mig Brother, on your radio, thebigmig.com, or everywhere on social.
You know where the solution can be found, Mr. President? In churches, in wedding chapels, in maternity wards across the country and around the world. More babies will mean forward-looking adults, the sort we need to tackle long-term, large-scale problems. American babies in particular are likely going to be wealthier, better educated, and more conservation-minded than children raised in still industrializing countries. As economist Tyler Cowen recently wrote, quote, "By having more children, you're making your nation more populous, thus boosting its capacity to solve climate change. The planet does not need for us to think globally and act locally so much as it needs us to think family and act personally. The solution to so many of our problems, at all times and in all places, is to fall in love, get married, and have some kids."
Have you ever had great honey? No, I mean really good, all-natural, raw honey? Well, now you can, thanks to localhoneyman.com. We can ship out our locally made honey all across the U.S. So don't worry, you won't miss out. Plus, Local Honeyman has so many different flavors, like Utah Wildflower, High Desert Delight, Happy Valley, and Blackberry, just to name a few. So purchase your delicious raw honey today at localhoneyman.com.
Do you treasure your liberty? Well, at lovingliberty.net, we most certainly do. And we want to help protect your liberty too. Become part of the family. Everyone knows that the core of any society is the family. Therefore, the government should foster and protect the integrity of its family, we the people. Won't you join us as a Loving Liberty sponsor to help us promote the principles in the 5,000-year leap? Let's restore the miracle that changed the world at lovingliberty.net.
Back with you live, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about offhanded comments by the Trumpster, by Donald. And I get it. I understand. You want to lash out. You want to speak out. You want to make some funny statements. I get it. And his ability to connect with the people is incredible. I mean, Trump, they mocked him for talking like a fifth grader. But, hey, that's what it takes. That's what newspapers are these days. Fifth grade kind of language. And Trump is masterful at it. But behind the scenes, Lance, like I was saying right before the pause, this guy is very brilliant, very intelligent, very thoughtful, very kind. And I've got evidence behind the scenes that that's the case. Some things come out in the media, some things you just hear about because you know people. But I remember Ben Carson, for example, got confused on one of the cues when he was even running against Trump for president. And he got confused on a cue and he stood there and it was like, hey, clown show, because, Ben wasn't paying attention, or he was, but he just got confused. Trump literally had a lot more experience coming out on talk shows and this and that than Ben Carson did. Ben's a surgeon, right? Anyway, long story short, Donald ran by Ben and grabbed him and said, come on, man, we're supposed to go out. And he totally was cool to Ben. That was when he was actually running against him for president, even, for that matter. And things like that tell you the character of someone.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've heard lots of stories from people extremely close to Donald Trump, personal stories of the way he has treated people and what he has done for individuals. And the guy's a good guy. At the end of the day, a lot of people don't see that. See, for me as a New Yorker, maybe I give him the extra room when he says one of these things because I kind of get it. It's hard not to harbor ill will sometimes. It's hard not to let your mouth, overload your butt occasionally. It happens to me. There are these moments when I have this, maybe this internal chaos that comes out of my mouth. And I try not to do it, but it's hard sometimes because emotionally, if you care about something, and I'm sure in his case, with the amount of times he's been gone after, I will give him credit for one thing. Every time he interacts with one of these network people, one of these reporters that really is a fake news expert, he's calling them out right in front of everybody in the room, and I love that's going on. So I guess it's hard to take those pieces and separate them from maybe the mistake ones.
I agree 100%. I don't mean to be critical of Trump on that. I do mean to say, though, that we've got to avoid the clown shows, because just think how many more critical issues we could get to if we could avoid those. And so I hope my comments are not attacking but more constructive rather than just criticism. I get it, and I totally agree. And Trump has changed the media game. I mean, before it was Sam Bushman talking about the new media takes center stage. It was Sam Bushman to say, hey, the lamestream press has got to go. And Trump jumped on that bandwagon in a meaningful way, and he's done way more to actually change that than I've been able to do. So, I don't have room to talk either. All I'm trying to do is focus on constructive ways to say, hey, let's make sure that things are presidential. Let's not give them cannon fodder for the ability to manipulate and play games. What's fascinating is they all loved Trump before he got into politics. And even though he'd make statements like that, nobody seemed to care. They'd love him and hug him. And, oh, my gosh, the Trump is in the room. And they'd throw kisses and all these things. And now that he's standing up for things that matter most, these people have lost their minds. And I just find that very, very interesting. Indeed. Anyway, there you have that. Tell me about the Big Mig show, who you guys are interviewing, what's kind of going on.
Yeah, we've had a lot of great stuff going on. Of course, we've got our regular show, the Big Mig Show on Rumble, and then we've got our Crypto Power Hour show, which is the #1 crypto show on Rumble. And then we've got the Global Finance Forum, which is on Friday. So the Crypto Power Hour is 3 p.m. Wednesdays and Fridays, and then Global Finance Forum is on Fridays at 1 p.m. And we're doing really well. We had Dean Cain on, actually. And he's a great interview. He's on this morning. So, if you like, we've been getting a big variety of people, a lot of MMA. I've got a couple of Navy SEALs coming on here shortly. So we're excited about it. And we just moved to the Dan Bongino time slot over on Rumble. That's 11 a.m. Eastern Standard, Monday through Friday for our regular show. And Rumble decided that a lot of our customer base, the people that like to follow us, were there in that time zone. So that was a great opportunity.
Now, the cool part is some of these shows that you're doing, too, they're not really political in nature. They're more financial related. They're more related to kind of entertainment news. And some of that I really think is valuable. There's so many people on politics, and obviously I'm one of them, but I've been around longer than everybody else, too. But we don't need a whole lot more commentary, politically speaking. What we need is other aspects of our lives focused on, and you guys are getting it done.
Yeah, we've tried to take on what I would consider more kind of a Joe Rogan, Sean Ryan, Steve Crowder style. So we do more of a variety show. It's in my opinion, you're right, that political market, you've been around a long time doing it, and I would consider you one of the top experts in it. It's interesting, though. I think really for the general public, I think the Rogan style seems to be where the demand is. It seems to be that. So we've kind of tried to diversify. We started out more politically driven. I also think, as we're probably going to discuss later in the show, it seems like the capitalization that's available, if you're not going to go wine and dine and scam the grant world and lobby, it would seem like there's more money in the general talk show variety show concept than there is in the political genre, especially if you're on the conservative side. Now, if you'd flip the script, Sam, and you wanted to go over there on the liberal side and talk a bunch of, garbage about Donald Trump and the administration, I'm sure they would pay you an excessive amount of money.
That's right. And the more salacious you make it, the more liberal you make it, the greater cash you can derive. Even pulling money straight out of the government. And that'll be a story we want to talk about here. NPR in the news. National Public Radio, PBS, these kind of government-sponsored, funded, promoted media groups. They're very interesting. And most people don't really understand the history of them. They haven't had the light shined on them. Trump is doing a magnificent job in this, too, Lance.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. At the end of the day, listen, there's a lot of things I think he's doing right now, Sam. I feel pretty confident about a lot of the decisions that are getting made, although I don't know if I'm convinced about the big, beautiful bill. That might be one of the most recent things that I'm not sure about.
Well, here's my response. It's horrible because it spends us into oblivion. Yes, it saves a lot of money. Yes, it preserves the tax cuts. It does a lot of things that we want. The problem that I have with it is it doesn't cut spending. And speaking of financial shows, let me just throw this out at you because I think you're a financial expert as well. Not only that, you're not an attorney, but you've got some legal background, and you've been in the trenches in a lot of meaningful ways. And so here's the deal: the debt ratings have dropped. All three companies have basically reduced the ratings for the United States of America. That is serious, Lance. And if there's another hit or two to the credit rating of America, hey, our interest goes up. We're already paying $1 trillion a year in interest. And so I don't understand why Trump and the big, beautiful bill in Congress and especially whacked out Mike Johnson. I think the guy's a clown, personally. And I say that because if anybody should know that we're spending ourselves into oblivion and these rating degradings are a serious problem, he should know. I mean, the guy's the Speaker of the House. And if he doesn't know, then he doesn't belong there. Because I'm telling you right now, Lance, if you and your credit rating goes down, pretty soon you can't borrow money to buy a car. You can't borrow money if you need some health care problems. You can't borrow money if you've got some kind of a situation. And it really affects you personally. Well, the nation, the world's looking at the United States as kind of the, quote, global leader. And when we start to just get hit, I mean, one was in 2011 or 2012, I can't remember. One was in like 2023, and now the latest one just hit. The Moody's one or whatever you call it. And I look at that and I go, man, we can't keep taking those hits and keep spending that money. Anybody in their right mind can see that, right?
Yeah. And, it seems simple to me. I mean, you and I could probably balance that budget very quickly. But I think, maybe part of the problem is, Trump does seem to be making cuts. And then every time we turn around, the judiciary decides they're going to stick their nose into it and they're going to try to stop him, whether it's deportation, which I think is important because, of course, immigration's been costing us just a crazy amount of money in federal funding. But, that's the difficulty. Sometimes I think we see it. It's very clear. Any business knows you can't spend more than you take in. But the federal government hasn't operated like that in a very, very long time because, of course, they just print the money. Doesn't surprise me that Moody's and the other bond groups that analyze the debt of different governments have downgraded us. And you're right. I think that we are in a very, very difficult spot right now, that if we don't make some very, very hard choices about cuts and just start, cutting, because let's face it, the founders and framers, when they created our government, it was supposed to be a government of limited jurisdiction. It was only supposed to be 17 subject matters. We weren't supposed to be involved in education and even, drug cases, of the United States. It was supposed to be the 17 subject matters, forts, docks, arsenals, crimes against ambassadors. We're supposed to have this limited jurisdiction. We become this giant hand into every pie government. A lot of it's got to do with the Commerce Clause, but you start looking at everything like the FDA and the CDC, I mean, and it just gets so complicated, Sam. And you and I see the waste very easily because when you do what we do, you have to run lean and mean. You can't have 50 people on your radio staff because at the end of the day, you know what it takes to operate your business. But that's not how the federal government operates. DOJ has identified lots and lots of fraud, negligence, and waste. Now, what the balance is, I don't know what the percentage is, how much is fraud, how much is negligence, how much is waste, But at the end of the day, it's very easy for him to see that because, of course, Elon Musk is a very successful business owner. I don't see why the people in Congress aren't capable of doing the same thing, unless, of course, it's because the installed politicians that we're sticking in our government are incapable and have no experience in anything other than shystering the American public.
Many of them are on the take, and that's the big problem as well, ladies and gentlemen. But I'm telling you right now, a warning from the wise. You better get a handle on this because it ain't going to be pretty if we get derated or if we lose our credit rating. It's not going to go well for us, ladies and gentlemen. I'm telling you right now, we'll be the laughing stock of the world, a country in decline. We got to prevent that, and the way it starts is with good, honest, wise servants of the Republic. Hang tight, Lance Migliaccio, thebigmig.com, on Rumble and everywhere else, and yours truly continue in seconds.
How would you like to help this program reach more people and earn silver at the same time? Call or text 801-669-2211 for complete details.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Rich Thomason. Vladimir Putin is playing with fire. That's President Trump's assessment of the Russian president's Ukraine strategy, Putin's unrelenting drone and missile strikes in Ukraine. On Truth Social, Mr. Trump writes, what Vladimir Putin doesn't realize that if it weren't for me, lots of really bad things would have already happened to Russia. And I mean really bad. President Trump has grown frustrated with Putin as Trump, tries to broker a Ukraine peace deal. Trade talks between the U.S. and the European Union are back on track.
After announcing a 50% tariff on EU goods on Friday, the president quickly agreed to delay those tariffs after a weekend phone call with the head of the European Commission. And now Donald Trump says the EU has called to quickly establish meeting dates. He writes on social media that this is a positive development, and he urges both the EU and China to open up for trade with the U.S., promising that both will be happy and successful if they do. Greg Clugston, Washington.
5 people wounded. A shooting yesterday afternoon at a shopping mall in Waterbury, Connecticut. Police say it began as a dispute between a couple of individuals, and things rapidly went downhill from there.
We do not believe this was a random act of violence. We believe this started as a conflict and it escalated. We do know that there was one gunman at this time we've identified. That gunman was armed with a semi-automatic pistol.
Waterbury Police Chief Fernando Spagnolo tells WFSB-TV that police are talking to a person of interest. SpaceX has launched its Starship mega rocket again after back-to-back explosions. This time it made it through the entire test flight last evening, but fell short of its main objectives when the spacecraft tumbled out of control and then broke apart. Watching Wall Street this morning, the Dow trading 11 points higher. The Nasdaq is down 5 points. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Mike Gallagher here, host of The Mike Gallagher Show. If you know me, you know I only put my name behind people and companies I trust. When it comes to mortgages, I trust Mike and Brian at Fellowship Home Loans. They're not just friends. They've done loans for me, my family. I've seen firsthand how they treat every client like their family. And these days, that personal touch really matters. With the cost of everything up, you might be looking for ways to free up cash. Maybe you're thinking about a cash-out refi or HELOC to finish some home projects, consolidate debt, or just get ahead financially. Fellowship is a full-service, direct lender, not a broker. They cut out the middleman. That means faster decisions, fewer fees, and less stress. Whether you're buying your first home, downsizing, or refinancing to get some breathing room, they'll tailor fit the loan to your life. Get started at fellowshiphomeloans.com/Mike G. fellowshiphomeloans.com/Mike G, or call 800-510-MIKE, 800-510-6453. Fellowship Home Loans, mortgage lending by the book.
Nationwide Mortgage Bankers, DBA Fellowship Home Loans, Equal Housing Lender, NMLS number 819382.
As you are aware, America is divided over every fault line possible. This is intentionally fostered by those who do not love God, family, or country. We believe a peaceful future as a free people absolutely depends on civility. Clarion Call for Civility is looking for funding and volunteers at every level to make our hopes and efforts a reality. Please donate, sign our pledge, and help us in our sacred cause. Please visit callforcivility.com for more details. Callforcivility.com.
Bypass the mainstream narrative with Liberty News Radio at libertynewsradio.com. Engage with charismatic hosts live or on demand. We cover the crucial news focused on God, family, and country. News that other networks simply refuse to use. Think of LNR's hard-hitting news and podcasts at your fingertips, anytime, anywhere. Join us at libertynewsradio.com. Empower your day with the truth, because the truth will set you free. libertynewsradio.com.
The Foundation for Moral Law is a nonprofit legal foundation committed to protecting our unalienable right to publicly acknowledge God. The Foundation for Moral Law exists to restore the knowledge of God in law and government, and to acknowledge and defend the truth that man is endowed with rights not by our fellow man, but by God. The Foundation maintains a twofold focus. First, litigation within state and federal courts. Second, education, conducting seminars to teach the necessity and importance of acknowledging God in law and government. How can you help? please make a tax-deductible contribution, allowing foundation attorneys to continue the fight. You may also purchase various foundation products as well at morallaw.org. Located in Montgomery, Alabama, the Foundation for Moral Law is a nonprofit, tax-exempt 501c3 founded by Judge Roy Moore. Please partner with us to achieve this important mission. morallaw.org.
Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
Welcome back to Liberty Roundtable Live. Of course, we're back with your host, Sam Bushin, and along for the ride today, myself, Lance Migliaccio from the Big Mig Show. We're bringing it, tip of the spear as always on this show. Of course, that's what it's all about. Doing the real work so you don't have to. That's why you tune in. Hey, Sam, I've got to tell you, I know you've been in the business for a long time. How long have you been in investigative journalism and media? I've got to ask.
This is fascinating. I started out in like 1991, 92. The reason I say 91, 92 is because there was an election. Bo Gritz was actually running for president at the time, and that's where I kind of cut my teeth on a lot of this. Before that, I was just learning about the Constitution, and I had some people that I knew that were constitutional, and so I was learning and reading books and things like that. But in 91, 92 is when I kind of started out. I dabbled in radio. I worked on commercials. I helped promote some talk shows, and by 96, I bought my own radio station, ran an AM radio station for a decade. I was chief photo washer. I was, on air, and first time went on the air, scared to go on the air and that kind of stuff. But then I've been in it really since like 91, 2, and I owned a station. So hard in was 96, really. And so it's been basically 30 years.
And honestly, you've got so much experience. But in that whole time, I've got to ask you this question. Did you ever pride yourself on disseminating fake news, fabricated stories, or taking a narrative and falsifying the information that you presented to the audience?
Are you kidding me? To me, that would be the death nail of credibility. No, absolutely not. Now, you could say, well, Sam, you take your own views on a story. That's right. I clearly distinguish between news stories, the who, what, when, where, why, how of a story, the facts, in other words. And then I have my own opinions and my own beliefs and my own commentary. And that's why it's kind of news and commentary and stuff like that, because there's a big difference. There's one, lay out the facts of the story, and then two, hey, I'll give you my take on it, right? So the facts of the story quickly would be, hey, the credit rating is degraded for these for the United States. That's a fact. That's the story.
Yeah, I think we're down to what, AA1, I think now. We were AAA previously.
Yes, and AA1's fine. It's not that big of a deal. It's not the end of the world. Of course, interest rates are slightly more. But the more you get degraded, the higher interest rates are. The ability to borrow money goes away. People won't invest in your stocks and your bonds and your these kind of things. And it really starts to take a toll. You won't see it until there's 2 or 3 more drops. But they'll happen faster. Of course, as they happen faster, then it becomes this snowball, right?
Of course. And exactly, you take pride in what you do. The ethics, the integrity, the morality of what you present, because it's the same thing we do on our shows. We present the facts. And, of course, everybody has their own opinions, and that's what the First Amendment's all about. But what I think's really started to take a turn for the ugly, and has been over the last 15 or 20 years, is this fake news cycle, this paid news cycle, these paid shills. These operations like USAID funding these far left operations that disseminate news that isn't truthful, that the narratives aren't true. And, I think that fake news, and I'm gonna kind of quote out of a video that became very popular, and I'll explain in a minute. Fake news is extremely dangerous for our democracy. And the reason I say that is because this brainwashing. Let's be factual.
We don't have a democracy, though. It's dangerous for our constitutional republic. And I know people want to gloss over that, but it's vital to understand, because a democracy eventually turns into tyranny.
Yeah, and I'm being sarcastic, because you're going to know in a minute, because I'm going to play this clip and you'll understand why. But, I don't know if you've seen this, where they take one, just like you said, a soundbite from Donald Trump. Of course, the newest thing they've jumped on online is this, what they're calling the Oval Office ambush. And this is, of course, these mainstream media hacks, parroting the exact same talking points on Trump's what I would call explosive meeting with the South African president last week, which, of course, everybody knows he called them out on air. And this has got to do with this rhetoric and these attacks on white farmers by different groups within Africa, different political groups, where they've been actually executing and seizing land from white farmers, believing it's part of their birthright. But I think this isn't the first time this has happened, and I think this is a pattern that has to be stopped. I often believe that these licenses that are issued by the FCC should be, under certain terms. So that I think if you get caught lying and fabricating news or manipulating the public intentionally, you should lose your license. That's my own personal opinion. I want to start by playing this clip because it kind of sets the basis, and that's where that line came from about extremely dangerous for our democracy. This is a compilation somebody did showing how mainstream media is being fed a script. And if you listen closely, you'll hear the script being repeated. Now, this is actually different news agencies years ago all across the country disseminating the exact same talking points, which, of course, were fed to them by, of course, we don't know who, but were fed to them specifically because if somebody hadn't done this, maybe you would never identify this. But let's play that first clip, Liz. Liz? Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
All right. Yeah. So all I'm telling you is this is serious. Here it is.
No, that's not it, Liz. Yeah, that's
wrong
not
clip.
Yeah, the first clip is it's not the one with the ambush. It's the I don't know. I think it's about I don't know. How
Try
long,
the second
about
one, Liz.
53.
This is my fault. Try the second
Yeah,
one.
The dramatic
okay. I think it's
scene
about
in the
a minute
Oval Office
53.
today. The tense confrontation.
Nope.
President Trump ambushing the president of South
Africa. Try clip three, Liz.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is my fault.
The sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets.
The sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these stories they simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Now, Lance,
Now,
this is
you heard the way that
fascinating.
was mirrored over.
Yeah, you said I've been in the news for a long time. This is fascinating. Let me give you a comparison to this clip that you just played. And you're right as rain that they have talking points and they all parrot the same thing. Rush Limbaugh, when he was alive, mocked them at this. But then Rush Limbaugh proved he was the water boy for this as well. And so here's what's happened. There were an attack on George Bush back in the day. And all the conservatives wanted to protect George Bush. Not me, obviously, because I don't play those games. I'm not Republican or Democrat. I'm just an American. But anyway, Rush Limbaugh basically played this clip where he created this montage, and all these news people were saying how gracious President George Bush and his lovely wife Barbara were, and how gracious. And the word they used was gracious. And then he played, and it was like, gracious, how gracious. What gracious people. And then when he got done with these, I'm literally like 30 or 40 different news clips, different voices that you knew how gracious the president and his wife was. And then at the end, he says, yeah, look, these guys, I caught them all with the same talking point, and here's the proof. And then he finishes right before his break, and he goes, they are gracious. And you go, wow, Rush, you had to jump on or you wouldn't be included, on Rush. And I literally played when I do my New Media Takes Center Stage, and he who owns the media makes the rules presentations. I played that, and I said, see, Rush couldn't finish the segment. It was right before the break. He couldn't finish the segment without adding his own, how gracious they were. Because if he didn't, then he wouldn't play the card. That's what they do in like the mobs and the gangs and stuff. You got to send a sign to make sure that you're in, right?
Yeah, and that's the key, right? At the end of the day, and most people don't identify that because they might be listening to one news source. But that compilation was news sources, small news channels from all over the country. And that whole threat, it's a threat to our democracy. It's a threat to our democracy. And of course, I agree with you. The word democracy is incorrect right out of the gate. But it's the fact that they mirror each other and that this repetitive. So you see this during big news events. I think this phenomenon occurs, where the left-wing media not only, pushes the same narrative across every network, but in many cases they read the same script, Sam, and this script is being given to them either by some kind of an organization behind the scenes.
You want to know who it is?
Say it's the Democrats. We could say it's the White House itself, but it's not a coincidence. They're clearly reading the talking points off a teleprompter.
Yeah, you know who it is, though?
Who?
It's the Associated Press.
Yeah, I believe that.
And yes, the Democrats might be behind it. Yes, some of the other people might be the ones that plant the news for the AP. But where you get it is the AP, and I'll tell you why. Because once you agree that you're an AP affiliate, you agree not only will you play what they give you, but you also agree that you'll submit your stuff to them. And they become this clearinghouse, and they've got caught with their hands in the cookie jar. Go ahead and skip the break. This is just too good. Lance is on to something. And so all I'm telling you is that the AP becomes the clearinghouse for it. Now, you're right. There's people who feed it. The White House, the Democratic Party, sometimes the Republican Party. But there's inside, rich people that have the ability. But it all clears through the Associated Press, though. And that's why there's several of us that don't really like the Associated Press. We call them out whenever we get the chance because they're not honest or truthful. They simply parrot news, and they make sure that it parrots all over the country. Now, they try to pitch themselves as the premier news service. But look, people like yournews.com and people like that, Citizens Press and these kind of groups are taking on the AP like nobody's business. And the AP is falling from grace for this very reason. But that's where it all the clearinghouse of it is.
Yeah, and I think that's the frightening part because most Americans don't have any idea about that. I think a recent example that a lot of people might remember is when, Ukrainian President Zelensky, he went before Congress. Of course, he was demanding billions of dollars more for weapons so he could continue his war. And then you saw these liberal hacks get involved. You saw the social media influencers get involved, the paid influencers. You saw the bot accounts get fired up when all of a sudden everybody in unison started comparing Zelensky, and this even makes me cringe saying it, to Winston Churchill. Now, that thing went viral everywhere. All of a sudden, Zelensky, this little installed troll, was being compared to Winston Churchill. And when you look at something like that, the American public, I don't think deserves this. These controlled operations shouldn't be allowed. People like to use the word Operation Mockingbird, but I don't think that's even a good terminology anymore because it's so much more sophisticated than that, Sam.
It's more sophisticated, it's more sinister, it's more hostile, it's more hate-filled, and if you go against the talking points, you're out. And that's why Trump basically banned the AP and some of these other different people from some of the news, gathering that they were doing. He's just like, this clown show's going to stop. And Trump's spot on that.
Yeah, but, I think there needs to be more accountability because, look at we're going to talk about the recent one now. We'll talk about this ambush, and we have a clip for the one that actually talks about this ambush. It wasn't an ambush. Trump was right over the target with South African President, Cyril Ramaphosa. He was right when he called him out, and he showed videos of this chanting to kill the white Boer, which is the white farmer in Africa. And he called him right out, showed the video. Of course, the president tried to go into denial mode. It didn't really work. But listen to some of these quotes that have come out now that we're going to hear in this audio clip. But I just want to read them so the audience just listens closely once we play the clip. Another dramatic scene in the Oval Office today, the tense confrontation, President Trump ambushing the president of South Africa. Up next, another Oval Office meltdown, President Trump ambushing the president of South Africa. Next quote, President Trump is being accused of conducting something of a diplomatic ambush of South Africa's president in the Oval Office. President Trump orchestrated another Oval Office ambush today. Now, these are all separate news agencies that are doing this. Clearly,
they're not really.
Clearly, this isn't
You're
coincidence.
Right. They're not really.
Yeah, exactly.
Because think about the word ambush, or think about the word calling George Bush and his wife gracious. These are unique power words. And Rush Limbaugh used to talk about this too. They're power words. They're designed in one word to shape and control the narrative. When I say they're gracious, how dare you contradict me? When I say it was an ambush, how dare you say anything less than that, right? That's what they're doing.
And I think that, they're really skilled at it. They've become highly skilled over the years, and most of the time we don't see this. Let's play that next clip with the ambush.
To the dramatic scene in the Oval Office today, the tense confrontation, President Trump ambushing the president of South Africa.
Next, another Oval Office meltdown, President Trump ambushing the president of South Africa.
President Trump is being accused of conducting something of a diplomatic ambush of South Africa's president in the Oval Office.
To be with you, I'm Katie Tur. President Trump orchestrated another Oval Office ambush today.
Today, Donald Trump meeting with the president of South Africa and attempting to ambush and humiliate that leader.
Zelensky territory, where essentially he was a bit ambushed inside the Oval Office.
Felt like an ambush in there, kind of like the President Zelensky meeting in the Oval Office.
This was an ambush. It was orchestrated.
Cyril Ramaphosa brought his best diplomatic self to this meeting, but nothing could have prepared him for this multimedia ambush.
What started as, to some degree, an ambush.
Well, Katie, I mean, it wasn't ambush.
Ambush.
Ambushed. Ambush.
An ambush.
Ambushing.
Ambushed inside the Oval Office.
That is exactly what Rush Limbaugh did with the gracious term. That was a perfect montage of the point. Now, here's the interesting thing that I want to point out. They say that it was, what was the word that one lady used? It was orchestrated. It was an orchestrated ambush. See, and to me, it was an orchestrated, we're going to call it an ambush. It wasn't an ambush at all. And how do I know this? You mentioned that I've been in the news business for a long time, Lance, and I have. And I've interviewed people from South Africa. I've interviewed people who have had their families raped and murdered, and I've interviewed people from over there. This is real. And Trump is bringing up, they've created an orchestrated lie that nothing's happening to the whites in Africa, because, of course, you can't defend whites. You can defend anybody but white people. And so they've created this orchestrated lie about what's happening in South Africa. They buried it and pretended it doesn't exist. Trump knows it's true, highlights the fact of it being true. This president wasn't ambushed. We should have been asking this president of South Africa or of Africa for a long time. We should have been asking about what the heck is going on over there. But see, the whites, though, can't get any protection, any defense, and it is happening, and it's real. And I've interviewed people on the ground there. I've sent people from this radio network. And when I say I've sent them, they paid their own way. I'm not, trying to take claim for it. But we've actually had people on the ground from our organizations, Lance, that have literally been on the ground and reported this from Africa.
Yeah. My wife is from South Africa. She's mixed race.
I don't know,
She grew up during apartheid, and she can tell you for a fact this is actually going on, and to the point that she'll even tell you that even when they take the farms, it's not like they continue to do anything with the farms. They just seize them and ruin them, and then they don't produce anything. It's, this is about, I think, enriching certain individuals. We're going to get into that in a minute. But my wife will tell you that apartheid's always been there. There's always been an issue. And that the black Africans have always tried to claim that they were being, held back because so many things that they weren't offered, like farmland. But the truth of the matter is, whenever they've been given the land, they do absolutely nothing with it. And this is absolutely happening because she still has all her family members there. So all the stories she hears about what they're doing, and she hears about, this group in South Africa, the EFF, and other groups, and what their leaders are doing over there. And of course, it is a absolute fact. And I want to tell you this. So this, this so-called ambush, where Trump calls out President Ramaphosa, and him saying, "Oh, this is a lie about the genocide in Africa." Him saying that this isn't happening. He shows all these explosive videos. Well, this leader from the EFF couldn't wait. His name is Julius Malema. Within a matter of days, he jumps right back out there. And this actually just happened days after Trump, pretty much lambasted the South African leader. And, of course, fake news said, "Oh, it's not happening. The genocide's fake." Well, I've got the clip from the next time he's giving a public speech, and we're talking about the EFF leader. And they have posted this on their EFF site. Now, you have to listen closely because, of course, he's got that African accent. But you'll hear towards the end of the audio clip how they start saying, "Shoot to kill the Nyaya Mazona," which means shoot to kill the farmer. Kill the boer, kill the farmer. And they're talking about the white farmers. So let's play that clip so the audience. So, of course, this just proves that Donald Trump was correct and over the target. And in my opinion, what this proves is that mainstream media, once again, puts up this narrative. Now, my question to you, Sam, is are they going to correct themselves? Are they going to come out and admit,
no,
well, I guess
they're
we
going to
were
quadruple
wrong.
down. No, they're going to say Trump's a nutcase, Trump's a white supremacist extremist, Trump's a nut, this isn't true.
And they're not going to play this clip
forever.
on mainstream media, that's for sure.
That's right. And that's why, basically, the president basically was saying, hey, it's a lie, because he thought he'd get protection and Trump wouldn't be able to circumvent it. But the mainstream press has taken a hit, and the new media taking center stage. Trump laid out a truth bomb, folks. Here's the clip.
No makubi siya no mabesetubola besishaya besibopa no mabesetubola besishaya Besibopa. Who left? Who right? Himasa. Who left? Kita. Kilame. Wata. Tamarumbo. Rumbo. Asicha. Where were you when I'm dead? Where were you when I'm dead? So for skitchy. Emoye. So for skitchy, etati, kichi, Sibram Konto Alliance, Ongelabant, Hibagiti, Siltatile, Hilagit, shoot to kill, Kilama, shoot to kill, Yamaza, kill the poor, the farmer, kill the poor, the farmer, I repeat, kill the poor, the farmer, kill the poor, the farmer, my
Now, I think it's very clear.
Shoot to kill?
Shoot to kill. And I'm sorry that the clip goes on for so long, but what he's doing, from what my wife actually explained to me, is this is part of the process that when they have these big political meetings, they chant to ramp up the crowds, to incite violence. So part of what the EFF style is, and the reason I wanted to play the whole clip, because in the beginning it's hard to tell because, of course, they're speaking in their own tongue.
Yeah, playing with liquor and ratchet it up.
Right. That she said that their whole political agenda is to ratchet the people up and agitate them into taking action. So, of course, this is that EFF leader, that Julius Malema. This is the same guy that Trump played a different clip of his talking about, killing the white farmer. The president, of course, tried to say, oh, no, that was just a one-off event, the president of South Africa. And guess what? It wasn't a one-off
proven
event.
that false.
Yes. So I like to see mainstream media go around and now correct this. All these people that came out with these ambush clips. And see, this is the problem, in my opinion. I think that we've always had the FCC, the FTC, they've always been out there supposedly for accountability, supposedly to make sure that the licensed agencies and the media that's out there doing it is doing it correctly. But we don't have any accountability for when they lie. And I think there should be penalties for lying. It's one thing, like you said, to give an opinion. I have many opinions. Maybe many of them are not very popular. But at the end of the day, when those opinions are presented as fact and they mislead or misrepresent or try to brainwash the American public into doing something, I think there should be consequences. Maybe excessive fines to begin with. And if you continue that pattern of lying and misrepresenting and manipulating the actual facts, my question is, when does a 1A right become a bludgeon, a weaponized mainstream media system that should be corrected, maybe by potentially losing your license if the fines don't correct you?
And the question becomes, hey, when do you have blood on your hands, Lance?
Yeah. I think the second you lie, you have blood in your hands, because maybe those lies, just like they did for the pandemic, and now in this story, actual lives are getting lost. You're responsible for that, aren't you?
And you in the media might make a mistake and think you're right on a point because you've been propagandized for so long, but now you know the truth, and now you either own it and tell the truth, become a truth teller, or you have blood on your hands. God save our republic.